So we're talking about the desktop organizer. I've got the pieces, I got the first board cut down. These are going to be what I have here will be the front and the back, including the drawer front. I have taken the time to cut them down, and can we see there's a face mark right here that's showing me because I planed this side nice and flat. So if we look at it, it's perfectly flat there, and there's no twist in it. So this is perfectly planar, as is this one. So it's actually kind of like when I put those together, like I don't know if that could be heard, but there's like a rush of air coming out of them because they're so, each one of them is so flat compared to the other one. So that's pretty cool. So I want to go ahead because the backside, I don't know if you can pick it up, but the backside is not flat. I can see light coming through it. I don't know if it can be picked up on this, and this is much thicker than what I need. I want about 1/2 inch. So we have marking gauges, and what are marking gauges? Well, I'm glad you asked. This is my collection of them here. I keep them in this what looks like almost like a trestle table. It's got a live edge of cherry on there. I just like the way that looks, so I figured I'd show that. That's where I keep all my marking gauges. And I'll give you a little history for fun. This one probably gets used less than any of the others. This is the first one that I bought. I do like the length of the beam. It is pretty long. Very simple device. It's got this sliding beam. You lock it down. You measure it off here to the blade. Now this has can we see it? That is a knife point. That is a blade at the top of that. That is very good for going across the grain. So if I was to use that, I would go like, go on the back. I would go like this across the grain, and it's not giving me a really good line because this edge here is not flat. But that gives you a parallel line to an end. It's great. When I first got started, that's what I started with, and I realized this isn't very useful for me because the knife edge, when you're going with the grain, the knife edge tends to get caught in the grain and pushes the gauge all over the place. And so I don't really use this one very often because if I'm going to mark off of an end and go across the grain, I'm usually using my square and a marking knife. I just find that's the easier way to do it. But that was my first marking gauge, and then I went with this one, which has a pin, a single pin here, and I'm not going to undo this one because I do have this set to a very specific distance. And then here is two other pins. That's called a mortising gauge. This is more of a combination gauge because you can do both mortising and regular. And that's so if I could get two parallel lines together, first you have to set those two to whatever size you want it. Then you move the fence to how far you want it off of your piece. And the benefit of a pin is it doesn't give you a nice as an edge as the knife style, but it goes with the grain very well. And this is quite useful. This one's not very long though, and it's a bit heavy. This is my first mortising gauge when I wanted to set mortises. I'm going to leave that one out for now because we're going to use that in a moment. From that, I kind of upgraded to one of these wheeled gauges, and these are nice. This one especially, I've liked this one. It's got these two knobs, so I can kind of micro adjust it to fit in exactly what I want. This will go with the grain. This will go across the grain. These wheeled ones are nice, and it's like if I have to get into a corner, this one will be very good. I can put that right along my edge, and no matter how big the corner is. This one, on the other hand, I have got about a little over an inch and a quarter, that if I'm in a drawer, if I'm under a cabinet, I can't use this because the top will will prevent me from doing that. All right, so this one, I've used this for quite a few years. It works very well. Do find it a little hard to set up at times. And it's not, this is kind of a low end, a low quality one, but it works. It does everything I need. I upgraded to a different mortising gauge. This one has, very similar to that. It's got 2 pins, and this is a little bit more sophisticated because if you can see the very tip, this one has a flat spot on the top, and this one has a flat spot on the bottom. And what that does is when you put on a line, no matter what knife or what have you have a beveled side, and that beveled side causes bruising on the wood. So you want that to be on the part you're taking out. This allows me to decide which side do I want a clean cut and which side do I want do I want the bruising that I can go ahead and remove. So this is a mortising gauge because it's got the 2 pins. You can use one of them or the other, and the benefit of this is I can choose whichever one of the beams I use. I can decide which side the bruising will go on. From there, I got this one. This is a nice quality marking gauge. Again, it's got the one pin or the one wheel on it, so I can get tight up and in there. And it's got a micro adjuster at the end, and I find that is just really easy to set up and lock down. And once it's locked down, I don't have to worry about it. Difference. This is right in the dead center of that. This is it's still a circle, but it's not in the center, and that gives me a little bit more reference on the side of the board. And I really do like that the feature. So this is the gauge I use more often than not. So that's my go-to gauge. And this one is the newest one that I've gotten. This is specifically a mortising gauge, and it's got knives on both sides. And let's see if we can make that a little bigger, easier to see. The beam controls it, but you notice how the top ones are fixed, the bottom ones move together. And the knife on this side, it's got a flat edge on the top, flat edge on the bottom, and here you have the flat edges on the side. So if I'm doing a mortise, and when you do a mortise, you generally do a mortise and tenon, and you measure them out the same gauge because you want the tenon to be the same size as the mortise. And so what this does, the mortise is just the hole that the tenon goes into. So what this does, like if I'm doing the tenon, I want that side because I want a nice flat edge, on the outside of the tenons. I don't want any bruising, and then vice versa here. When I'm doing the mortise, you want the flat, even sides on the outside. And that's all great. That's what this was designed for. Very easy to set up and go because of the specifics there. Then I realized that every time you do a mortise and tenon, you generally have a shoulder around it, and you don't see that bruising anyway because it's covered up by the wood. So it's a nice gauge, but I don't really use it that much. I do use the other ones, but let me show you right here, because right now I've got these rough boards. I've got one face done, which means the next side is to square an edge to it. But before I do that, because I don't really know which pieces are going to go together, I want to get them to around the right thickness, just a little bit easier to work with. When I plane the edges, plane the ends, right now it's about 1 inch thick. I want to bring it down to 1/2 inch. So, like I said, I've already got this one set up. I'm going to move this camera down just a bit so we can see what's going on. I'm going to put the fence along the side, and I'm not pushing down into the wood. I'm more, this hand, my right hand is pushing into the wood. This hand, the left hand, is kind of countering that pressure. And I'm not really pushing down so much as I'm pushing laterally. and I can go over it a couple of times. That'll leave me a nice straight line, so that way no matter how out of square the bed face is, I'm always referencing off of the good face that I know is nice and square. So that way when I cut this down and I plane it, if I work to that line, then I know I have half an inch left because that matches that distance. And then by the time I'm finished, these 4 pieces will be the same. I'll have to create a couple of panels like that. You know, I'll kind of rearrange and decide how I like it. But that's what the gauges do. These things are invaluable in hand tool woodworking. They have different purposes. It's nice to have multiple ones because I can have this one set up for that action, this one set up for another function, this one set up for even another. So that way I have consistency and I do not have to reset them. You know, that way I keep it all nice and accurate. Yeah, so marking gauges, and that's where they're used. I will use it again once I get get this down. I'll plane up one of the edges. I'll plane up an edge there, so that'll go that way, and then I'll end up using another one to rip down how wide I want the boards. And pretty much all you need to know about gauges.